The Society of Black Lawyers and football, synonymous at the moment. What's the motivation?
Well, the motivation is primarily about hate crime and the fact that it is quite apparent to us that black footballers are not being treated with the respect they deserve, that the ugly face of football, which is the racism, the disrespect and the abuse, are coming to the front, not just on the pitch in Premier League games, but also at grassroots level. And therefore, we believed it was high time that we took, in a sense, our legal view and sought to step in to protect the interests of our community. And it doesn't matter whether they're Premier League footballers or they're young boys playing on a Saturday or Sunday morning. It's all the same.
Was it a scenario that you were looking at for a few months and then decided now is the time to act? What was a catalyst? Was it the events in Serbia with England's under-21s, the T-shirts that war won, or what was the catalyst for you?
I think it was a combination of things. We'd been looking actually and watching the John Terry incident and Suarez incident. We issued a press release about that. Didn't press the point because it looked as if it was at least being investigated formally by the police. But then the penalties were just ridiculous for both Suarez and John Terry. And then on the back of that, the Serbia instance was just appalling. And obviously the T-shirts suggested that very much there was something underlying this where black players themselves were deeply unhappy. And I think it's that that combination of factors had us look more vigorously at things more quickly. But we'd already actually had discussions, informal discussions, with our sister organisation, the National Bar Association in the US, in August, to look to bringing over NFL players at the end of the season to meet with black players in the UK to see if there was a way, in a sense, internationally, they could work together and learn from each other.
In terms of how you've been greeted by the football fraternity, how surprised or not have you been? Because obviously there's been resistance to what you're trying to do.
Well, I mean, wherever you progress change, you're going to meet resistance. And in fact, it's a good sign that if you use even the word black, you will meet resistance. And I've been amazed in a way, or surprised, that even some sports journalists are amazed to hear of the Macpherson definition of institutional racism. Mr. Palios hadn't heard of it before, despite being a former chief executive of the FA, that people are surprised by the fact that you seek to intervene in football as if it's nothing to do with law or nothing to do with criminal activity, which it can be. And therefore, it doesn't come as a surprise that the more vigorously you get involved, and if you make a connection between lawyers of colour and players of colour, generally some white people in power and authority have a problem with that.
I mean, in terms of race and football, there has been a lot of progress made with the Kick It Out campaign, Show Racism, Red Card. But do you think there's a level of complacency that this country has decided to hide under in terms of this issue?
I think I'm not sure where things went wrong, because we did keep track of the anti-racist movement in football. We were very pleasantly surprised when it moved forward, and we were supportive of kick racism out of football. Less happy when it became kick it out, because you tend to dilute the message when you're looking at everything. And then in recent years, we saw that really those campaigns seem to have lost some steam. And the problem is, if you fail to then challenge, particularly the authorities that fund you, then it presupposes that there is a more serious underlying problem, which means that you are not speaking for those that you're meant to represent. And somewhere you may be speaking more about your own longevity than you are about the rights of black players, managers, coaches, spectators, etc.
So in terms of the Society of Black Lawyers, what's on the agenda? What would you like, without giving away too many secrets, what would you like to do moving forward to progress this issue?
Well, I think we wish to engage with the Minister of Sport. We've already written to him. We're writing in due course to the FA, PFA and Premier League and asking them to address the issue of racial abuse and discrimination in their sport. And we are linking up with the NFL through our organisations there, some of our contacts in some of the African countries, and seeking to work towards having possibly a seminar maybe at the end of the season on racism in European football, not just in British football, but possibly looking at the wider issues in the whole of Europe.
Recently you called the Football Association institutionally racist. What did you base that on?
Well, it was based on a number of things. Firstly, and you have to look at all their policies and practices, because that's what the definition says. It says an institution which may treat people differently on the grounds of colour, nationality, race, ethnicity, based upon their policies and practices, whether it's deliberate or unwitting or unconscious. It's the effect on the victim that's important. So what we looked at the fact that they have only elected the first black woman, to the board in 2010/11, that they do not monitor racial incidents on the Macpherson definition, which says if you or the victim or any other person believes it's a racial incident, it has to be recorded and investigated as such. But they have a sort of gatekeeping system, which is about 14 years out of date, where the county FAs then decide if it's a racial incident, and only then does it get recorded. And the failure to adopt a standard for contracts where racial abuse in every player's contract, managers, coaches, whoever it is, referees, is a matter of gross misconduct and can engage summary dismissal. None of those things are in place. And in fact, I think the PFA said it's only considering it, and the FA was silent on it. So those are things where policies and practices are discriminating against black and minority players, coaches, managers. And for that, there's only one proper label, which is institutional racism, that fits the FA, PFA and the Premier League at the moment.
Recently, the issue was brought to the public's general wider attention by certain players not wearing T-shirts. What was your reaction to some of the management and the football fraternity that frowned upon players that didn't wear T-shirts?
Well, it was very disappointing. I mean, it was extremely patronising, it was paternalistic, and it looked upon players as if they were mere possessions or chattels, which evokes a bygone era we thought would long since gone. And therefore, if you respect people's individuality, their freedom of choice, then any player has the right to wear a T-shirt or not. So the symbolism of not wearing it was important, but actually the reaction of senior figures such as Alex Ferguson and others was even more telling, because it said, actually, we don't respect you, and we know best, and we will tell you when to get up, when to go to sleep, when to wear a particular T-shirt and when not to. And that, for me, says that we need to empower black players to take charge of their own lives and destinies.
You touched on it earlier. Obviously, it's quite easy to look at the Premier League players who are earning millions per annum. But there's a serious issue at grassroots level as well, because I know you've been working with the Nirvana FC up in Leicester as well. That issue there in terms of grassroots level, that's a major problem as well, isn't it?
Well, it is, and apparently reading some of the FA's website, we see that they are themselves concerned, deeply concerned, that the level of racism and hostility and abuse at grassroots level is something they haven't come to grips with. And therefore they have commissioned, I think, a report themselves, which is due to report at the end of the year, about how their policies and practices have to be tightened up. And certainly the experiences when we saw Nirvana FC the other Saturday morning, Leicester, we were appalled by the experiences of 13 and 14-year-olds who not only received abuse from other players, but from parents, whilst it would appear that the referee did little or nothing other than make a note in his book. And the reports we're having from different parts of the country, that is an all too common experience for black clubs, amateur clubs up and down the country.
One of the hot topics of recent weeks has been the formation of a players' union, a black players' union. Is that something that you would like to see and would like to drive and take forward?
I think it has to be for black players to determine themselves what's in their best interest. All we can do is support and encourage. But one thing we do know as a matter of principle is that where there is black self-organisation within a structure, you move forward the pace of change considerably faster than if you have to speak out as an individual. And whether that's happened in the police force, or it's happened in the probation service, or in law, we have driven fast change, not at the pace that the institution wants, but at the change which we needed. And as I said not too long ago, people think Obama came out of nowhere. He actually came out of black self-organisation and the Congressional Black Caucus in the US. So you've got no better example of the power of a unified body representing everybody's interests. And actually, if the PFA, FA really wanted to address diversity, it's an idea that they would embrace and promote.
I mean, obviously your profile has been raised in recent weeks. I mean, you've done several interviews. I get the impression though that you're here to stay, while others think that you'll blow yourself out, or the Society of Black Lawyers will blow themselves out. I get the distinct impression you're here to stay, to make a positive change.
Yes, I mean, I think people underestimate the fact that we are a campaigning organisation. We were formed 40 years ago. We campaigned for race training for the judiciary over 5 years and stuck the distance. We campaigned for anti-racism within the legal profession, targets, monitoring, equalities officers, over 15 years and stayed the distance. And in relation to the Lawrence inquiry, you know, we sought to get the involvement of the US Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder. So we have a track record of, once we do get involved, when something's a problem, we will not go away. And so for anybody that hoped that we would suddenly disappear, you know, off the side of the pitch, has really got another thing coming. We're here for the long term.